This video is going to be a little bit more casual, just a normal, simple, classic story time. One of the hardest aspects of my life now, I have 4 years outside of the church and the priesthood, is that I had to start my life from zero. Before, when I was in my former congregation, everything that was surrounding my daily existence was inside that congregation, was for that congregation. I went to college, which was a college of this congregation. There was no credits. Maybe I could get a few, but 2 years for a bachelor's in liberal arts would have gotten me nowhere in the real world. My mind was focused on how can I serve not only God, but this community, which I thought was the community. Then I went on to the seminary, 7 years. 7 years in the seminary to become a priest. Not that I thought I would make it, but I did. And that was for the congregation, to give myself to this cause that I believed in. There was no practical application in the real world because in my life, there was really nothing important outside of this congregation. And then I leave the congregation and the priesthood, and I realized that maybe it helped me in my character, in who I am, all of those years in dedication, but there was no practical application in the real world. For my whole life, and especially during those years in the seminary, I was depending not only on God and grace, but I was depending on other people. I was putting myself in their hands to form me into this person that I should be, that they told me I should be. And I entrusted myself to them. When I left, everything depended on me. I had to depend on myself, which was mind-blowing. In 1-2 years, my psychologist told me I had gone through the experiences, emotional, practical, all of that a normal adult goes through within 10 years. I had to quickly pick up on so many different aspects and develop so many skills within a few years in a different country with a different language, with no support from the family, from friends. All of my contexts were within that congregation. So without even bringing in the idea of my sexuality, I'm just going to talk about more of the practical aspects. So first of all, this religious congregation, after I was ordained, they gave me a few months, and then I was shipped off to Guadalajara, Mexico, where I currently am, and I organized an intensive English or Spanish class, which was a 2-week course, and it basically taught me nothing because we started in the very beginning with the alphabet. So when I actually got down here, I couldn't communicate at all. And then I left, and to survive, I learned Spanish. And as I said before, I did have a few contacts here in the real world. I quickly found out what their intentions were, and they weren't the best, but they did help me a little bit in the beginning. But I was basically on my own. My family wasn't talking to me. The superiors here in Mexico, the people who were supposed to be taking care of me, never reached out. The priest that I had been speaking to during my crisis never reached out to me. A few priests did reach out to me. It was more in the tone of, what the hell are you doing? But basically I was on my own. I did it to myself. I made the decision to leave. And I knew that that was the situation that I was going to encounter, that I was going to be alone. That's how necessary it was for me to leave the church and the priesthood. I was putting myself in a very difficult situation because it was better than staying. So because the new priests are not allowed to have cell phones or anything like that, because only the young priests have problems using cell phones. I didn't have a phone when I left. In the real world, having a phone, especially a smartphone, is essential. So that was something I had to do immediately. And going back to what I was saying before, I didn't have any career outside of the priesthood. I didn't have any practical purpose outside of the religious congregation. I was stuck. And leaving, it was kind of like jumping off of a boat and then having to survive in the water. So I'm in Mexico because I couldn't go back to the States. I couldn't afford it. I only had the equivalent of $250. The first thought that came to my head was, Francis, you know English. Why don't you teach English classes? And I basically built a career with teaching English. And then just another simple thing that was not so simple. I didn't have any normal clothes. I didn't have any street clothes, as we called it. I wore cassocks all the time. So going along this process of who is Francis now, I also had to figure out what type of clothes do I like. I would buy clothes when I started getting money and I wouldn't like it. I'm like, no, this isn't me. Or I'd see somebody, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really cool, and then I'll try to do it, and it's not me. It seems something so stupid and artificial, and maybe it's my past not wanting to be vain, but clothes are so important. They express so much about who we are as a person. Mind you, a lot of the clothes were given to me by friends because I didn't have the money to buy clothes. So they would say, oh, this doesn't fit me. Here, take this. Or here, I have an extra pair of socks. Here. I never expected the grass to be greener on the other side. I'm a lot more realistic, and I know that life is difficult. I think that the trajectory of my life is maybe a little bit more complicated than it should have been, but this is it. This is my life. Right now, I'm kind of sick of just being in survival mode. I'm still trying to find my footing, and I'm still having problems with finding a job, finding something a little bit more stable. It seems like every month I'm thinking, how am I gonna pay rent? It does work out. I do figure it out. I've been trying the tattooing. I'm trying to establish myself. And then with art, we all know the stereotype, starving artist. So that's already gonna be difficult. And then with the English classes, let's just say this past year has not been very good for that. People don't want to spend money for English classes. I actually, a few days ago, lost my last student. So I'm figuring things out as we speak. Even though things are difficult, and even though there are a million details that it's hard to express in one video, this is just a nice overview. I know that I am where I should be. I have never in 4 years doubted that fact. I was waiting for it. I'm used to Catholic guilt coming the back of your head and coming around. So it doesn't matter how difficult life is. If you are where you should be, where you think you should be, then it's okay. So I hope this was interesting, and let me know down in the comments if there's something more specific you want me to talk about. But this is just another piece in the puzzle. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.